we are a general contractor who takes a holistic approach to home performance. So, you know, there's a ton of different pieces that go into what makes a home comfortable, and it's difficult to address all of them at once. Okay, Lisa's leaving more in. Hello. Perfect. Great. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, for the new folks, Brittnee with Greensavers, holistic general contractor based in Portland and in Bend, focusing on improving home performance, as you can see here. Right now, our big drive is like focusing on electrification of homes, so getting people off fossil fuels and trying to get them as much on our mostly renewable electric grid here in Oregon. All right. So, you know, heating systems, they need a lot of energy. British thermal units is how we measure it, and so it's going to be, you know, how much gas do you need to heat your home for this, or how much electricity. And so to this point, you know, the heating system is going to be one of the biggest hogs of energy, and but a new super efficient heating unit might not be like attainable for most people, or it may not make sense. So we try to find the path to make that as easy as possible. There's always going to be something that goes wrong in construction. I've worked in construction for over 10 years, and it's not what if something will go wrong, it's like when something will go wrong. What is going to happen here? What are we going to find whenever we dig in? Especially as a retrofit company working in these older homes, you never know what you're going to find. And so, you know, whenever you're looking at upgrading from an oil furnace or a gas furnace or a wood stove, you have to think about like, okay, so my electric panel's full. I only have 100 amp service. What's going to pop up here? And frequently it's like, okay, we need to upgrade the panel. Is it like an old panel with like the actual fuses? Is it, they're still around? Do you have knob and tube wiring in your house? Do you, like if you want to insulate over that, you have to get that removed. The knob and tube itself is not a bit of a hazard. So electricians are the ones who are supposed to handle that, right? And then, you know, with this system, like, will it physically fit into the space where you have your current system? Will it, or if you want like a wall-mounted head, will that fit on the wall? How do we make it fit? How do we run the lines, the power lines and the refrigerant lines up to that wall-mounted head or to the air handler that's going to be replacing your furnace? So, you know, so electricians look at the panel, like how to get the power to the thing. HVAC contractors are the ones who are doing the install and figuring out those pieces. And then, like I said earlier, like lots of homes in Portland in this area built before insulation was really a thing. And even then, like maybe it has insulation, but maybe it's vermiculite in the attic. Maybe that's what they use to insulate. Maybe it's asbestos. So, you know, the weatherization contractors, I know HomeRx over there is also a weatherization contractor, and they, you know, it's a lot to look at. It can take, you know, a full hour to go through someone's home and be like, hey, this is what I'm finding. And with that weatherization, with that envelope, like, what's the air quality? Is the home too tight? Do you have enough air infiltration? Whenever you know, have a newly built home, you still want to have some communication, but you also need to think about like, okay, unfortunately, we do have to deal with fire season now. We have to deal with smoke season, and so, you know, if your home is super leaky, or you have just an air handler in the basement that blows through like a media filter, that's not doing very much to improve the air quality in your house. So, you know, more stuff with the water heaters. So that's another part of moving towards, you know, whole home electrification is like frequently it's a gas water heater. Frequently it's on, you know, these old pipes that, you know, sometimes I was recently in a home where it was built in like 1951 and it was like old PVC. And we were like, oh, I don't even want to touch that. I don't want to look at it. What if it crumbles? And so, you know, plumbers, like water heaters, they take so many different to do it and do it right, that like you really need to pay attention. And so you have to get the HVAC contractors installed to deal with, you know, those pieces, and then you have to deal with the electricians and the plumbers. And so, you know, if you as a client, as someone who owns a home, is trying to do that, you know, that's a lot to juggle. That's a lot to keep straight. And then, yeah, there's these problems that happen when you're retrofitting like these, especially like in the homes that we frequently service. You know, there's always surprises. So, like the panel service and upgrade that most people need whenever they just have that 100 amp and they want to go up to a heat pump, like these costs are, you know, more than I would have anticipated before I started working in this industry. And it's just looking at that not as like a whole home, you know, endeavor, and just looking at it like, well, I need to get my panel upgraded, and then I need to do the remove and replace insulation. That's a long, long to-do list and a lot of things to juggle. And yeah, with the plumbing is always going to be a like big question mark of like, oh gosh, how much could this cost? So having somebody who has a good handle on that to guide is key. You know, and this is just us saying like, we can do everything. So who can go in and look at all the aspects of a home? Who can look at the windows? Who can look at the walls? Who can help organize like, okay, so we have the electricians coming this day, we have the oil furnace removal contractors coming this day, we have the HVAC install over here, and then we're going to be doing insulation. So that's a full-time job if you were to do it. And so having just bits and pieces, there's tons of companies that do a great job, like individually with all of this. Then there's also like incentives. There's like people who are like, okay, so you can get this ETO money, but you have to file it. You have to, you know, fill everything out, and you have to make sure it's right. And it's a lot to handle. With all of this, like, that's what we do. We handle all the ETO stuff. We handle all of the coordination between the different subcontractors. We handle like just telling you what we think would be the biggest bang for your buck in the home improvement world. So, you know, it's easy to think like, oh, I want a heat pump. It's like I want to get off my gas and I want a heat pump, and yes, probably. However, like if your home is super drafty and you don't have any insulation, that heat pump won't fix all of your problems. It's not a silver bullet. There isn't going to be one solution for every home. It requires like looking at things holistically and looking at the whole home as a system. And you know, it's like the water heaters are kind of a big one. It's not something that's super exciting to talk about, water heaters. Like it's really cool to like point at heat pumps or like look at new windows that look really awesome, but like heat pump water heaters are so efficient to operate, usually under $100 a year in energy use. That's just huge. And so if you're looking at like, oh, I want to get solar, but you're on like an electric resistance water heater that's costing $600 a year, you know, just switching over to a heat pump water heater, that's, you know, 3 kilowatt hours. That's like looking at it not just as like energy production, but like reducing how much energy you're using as well. And I'm pretty sure all of you understand that logic, which I won't keep beating that dead horse. And also like, you know, so looking at it, order of operations. This is the master plan. This is how we approach it. And so talking about the things that might go unnoticed by most people, like the weatherization, like the heat pump water heater, and being able to be like speaking with authority, like this is what we found has made people the most comfortable. This is what we found to make people like as efficient as possible and reduce their cost as much as possible. And yeah, there's some significant health and safety issues whenever you're looking at upgrading your home. The amount of times like found like active knob and tube wiring or asbestos that people didn't know about in ceiling tiles, or even just like when you have, if you have a gas water heater and it's not fully ducted out, it's an atmospheric like draft vent next to a gas furnace, frequently people will be like, oh, I just want the heat pump furnace, I don't need the furnace air handler, I don't need a new water heater, but then we get worried about that water heater, for lack of a better term, being orphaned, and so it doesn't have like that drafting can affect it, can backdraft if there's high wind, if there's like a dryer in there that's going on, if the pressure changes and you fire up your water heater, you know, it's not always possible to switch out both gas appliances at the same time, but we really recommend if you have to wait on a heat pump water heater, putting a carbon monoxide detector in that room, especially if you're doing laundry. If your water heater is in your laundry room and you're running your dryer and you're down there, you know, and you're folding laundry in that laundry room and your water heater's going because you're using hot water, that's when you would need to be worried about, you know, potential carbon monoxide hazards. So just thinking about all of those pieces, it can be a lot. This was written by Craig, some of you may know him, but the fix things that may kill you first is such a him thing to say. It's nice and dramatic. And yeah, so part of like what does an integrated holistic approach to home performance mean? And that just isn't the home, it's also saving your sanity. And so like filing, you know, we don't do the tax rebates. We give you all the information you need to. That's handled between you and your tax professional. But the ETO will file that for you, or show if you're on oil. You know, all of these qualifying items. There's so much that's coming out within the next year, and it feels like there's a new press release every week or so that we have to like keep up with. And so frequently, a lot of time spent is just clarifying to people like, this is what we have now, this is what we think is coming in the future, and this is what we know is about to end, so we need to hop on it right now. And yeah, so like I said, also, it doesn't always make sense to do like heat pump water heater and a new heat pump all at once, especially with the IRA tax credit right now, where it's like you can get $2,000 for a new heat pump HVAC system, or you can get that money towards heat pump water heater. And so what we're recommending for people is to do, you know, whatever they need most right now, and then next year do the other part of the system. And so spreading out those tax credits as much as possible, as opposed to just, you know, going all in at once, if that makes the most sense. And yeah, there's a lot of times whenever people, I mean, some of you have come up to me and asked me questions while I was standing, and I answered, you know, I gave you the best answer I could, but until someone gets out there and they get into the home and like crawling around everywhere, like we can't give a definite answer about what needs to happen. And one thing that I've been surprised in as I've started to do this more is like, you know, people are smart and they're getting different quotes from different companies, and I'll be like 3rd or 4th. And I'm going into someone's home, and I'm like, oh, and I need to get up into the attic. And they're like, oh, why do you need to do that? I was like, oh, because that's a big part of where all of your heat's going in the winter, like, or in the crawl space. It's like, oh, like, why do you need to look at that? It's like, well, you have water lines running through it, and I need to know if they're insulated or not. That's a big thing. And so just keeping, like, it's not just like, okay, this is a 2,000 square foot home. It has, you know, this many appliances in it, this many windows. This is the size heat pump that it needs. It's much more complicated than that whenever you're looking at it as like a true holistic system. Yeah, and it takes a lot of training, and it's a lot to keep track of. For us, it's like we do a consultation, which usually takes about 2 hours, or we can do an audit, which will take about 4, a little bit more in depth, do a blower door, and then, you know, after that, after we go through it, then we have somebody else come out and do like a pre-construction walkthrough, like really, really dialing it in. So it's not just like one set of eyes on it. There's always going to be something that's missed. There's always going to be some change that needs to be made, or maybe something changed in the home itself. So it's not a static document. It's going to be dynamic. It's going to be what needs to happen and how do we do that, you know, according to all of our wants and needs. And there's tons of inspections, permitting, and, all kinds of utility paperwork, especially if you need to do a panel upgrade and then they need to move the panel across the house or they need to move the service mast. I don't know how many of you have had to deal with that recently. And it's good, important work, but it's a lot to juggle. We, as GCs, that's what we thrive in for sure. And yeah, so we're looking, that's the basic overall, that is our approach to how to get a home as efficient as possible. And so we've been working towards that, working towards electrification, working towards making things as accessible as possible, but just being super efficient isn't enough. That's not going to, save us. But beyond net zero is going to be a little bit more not just reducing consumption, but also focusing on increasing production of energy as well. And so you can't have a field big enough full of solar panels if the house is not, tidy and efficient, which is just going through basically everything that I did. There's a couple different options for clean air too, if you're more interested in that. You can talk to me. There's some really cool systems out there that can humidify or dehumidify or really scrub that air when we need it. And yeah, having the energy of resiliency too is pretty important. One thing I was speaking about earlier with someone was occasionally people think, oh, I want a gas fireplace for when the power goes out, I can use that. And that kind of scares me because that's burning natural gas in your home. And if the power's out, if there's a fan in that natural gas to make sure that the fumes go up the chimney, if there's a power outage, that's not going to get those gases out. So thinking about it as being resilient as well as just being as efficient as possible is particularly important here in Oregon with our earthquake danger. And it is a process, and it's something that we're learning as we go through it. So it's okay, we know we need to do weatherization on most homes. Okay, we know that adding a very good filtration system onto it, either an HRV or an ERV to your primary air emitter going through the ducts right by the where we replace the furnace. Just full home electrification, getting you off gas. That's another thing too. Thinking about earthquakes is having gas lines running to your house. Something goes wrong. That's where my nervousness really shines. I'm not from Oregon. I should clarify. Earthquakes freak me out. I'm from tornado land, so at least they're coming, right? And just thinking about how do we produce enough energy for our homes, and we're working on it. So here in Oregon, we're very lucky to have all these lovely trees, all of these good graded hillsides that we're built into. But that doesn't mean that we have a ton of space for solar panels. So how do we produce that solar? So the community solar programs that are coming out now and being developed are a key part of all of this. But yeah, we are holistic. We are a B Corp. We are a little bit more expensive than other people because we're handling all of this. Because we have more overhead. We have people in the office who handle these incentives. We have people who are, going out coordinating the things. They're the master schedulers. That's overhead that has to be incorporated into the cost. But part of it too is that's stuff that you don't need to think about. So it's the value of your time. Whenever you're signing on with, it doesn't need to be Greensavers. Anyone who acts as a holistic contractor. And they're the ones who are coordinating all of these different moving pieces to fully electrify, to become beyond net zero. That's, how much do you value your time per hour, basically. And yeah, we, right now, let's see, lead times can be a little long, especially for consultations. Right now, I think we're looking out until November for someone to get in. There's a cancellation list, of course, but it's out there, and that's because there's demand for it. So because what we're doing is a little unique compared to other people, And as far as I know, I think we're the only contractor who does this. Yeah, just a few more. Yeah, of course. Gotcha. And then I think we're almost done. Yeah. Yeah. So always ask as many questions as you have to your contractors. If they say, oh, this is what you need, they didn't look at your attic or your insulation or anything, ask them how they got there, or why are you what's your confidence in this? Is this actually what I need? We do heat load calcs, we do manual J's, and it's like that master plan is important as well. And so you can bite off okay, heat pump water heater today, and then a year from now we'll do the heat pump HVAC system. And it's entirely possible, in I think probably the best course of action, to spread things out as a master plan. And yeah, let's see, sorry. There's a lot of things through utilities. If you have PGE, they have a great car charger program going on right now if you need to update your panel. So there's always going to be something new, and just asking your contractors, okay, is this everything that I can get? Have you heard about this? Or what do you think about this? Great, and I think that's it. Thanks for sitting through that. I know it was a little dense. We have a booth over there. Are there any questions? Okay.
Could you talk a little about the ETOs you mentioned, incentive program?
Yeah, so that might be a question to go talk to me back at the desk. It'll depend on what you're looking at and what you're currently using for your heating.
So what is the standard? What's the ETO standard?
It would depend on if you have gas, electric, or oil, and so that would depend on and what you're interested in doing. And so if you're just getting a heat pump, then that would in your on gas stay. So the ETO incentive for high efficiency heat pumps, and it's also income qualified. So like I said, it does depend. So it could either be $650 or it could be $1,000 in rebate.
Oh.
Yeah.
So are your fees based on a percentage of the project, or is it by the hour?
Oh no, so we'll give you a whole, the whole scope, and it'll be it won't be per hour, or it won't be for that. We'll give you a proposal, and that'll be it.